The next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 2434. The Chief Clerk will report the bill.
House File number 2434, number 2 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to human services, the second engrossment.
There are amendments at the desk, but if there is no objection, we'll let the author explain the bill before we act on the amendments. I recognize the author of the bill, the member from Rock, Representative Schumacher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. This is the Human Services Finance Bill, our budget bill for the year. We were tasked with a target of $1.3 billion in reductions over the next 4 years. And with the work of the committee, and especially with Chair Knorr on this, we were able to accomplish that in the bill that we have today. A balanced, workable budget for the future. I'm going to take a few moments to walk through the first few provisions and then have Chair Knorr close up the walkthrough of the bill, and then we'll go on to the amendments. In Article 1, that's our Aging Services article. Here we update the case mix classification system to the patient-driven system for our nursing home throughout the state. That's a federal requirement, and so there are a federal change that we're concurring with on that. We fixed some property rate issues for nursing facilities in Chair David's districts, Representative Finke's district, and Representative Johnson's district. We fund the governor's budget items to pay for the Nursing Home Workforce Standards Board, as well as front-loading some of those costs that we have in this from this program. As we're all aware from the last few years that nursing home rates are delayed by anywhere between 18 to 24 months in when they get reimbursed, and so this works to address some of that with new policies that are coming from the Workforce Standards Board. We also apply a bed surcharge to the nursing home beds throughout the state to also work to balance our budget. In Article 2, we deal with the disability services areas. The governor originally proposed a 2% cap on inflation in this area, and we did something similar but a little bit better for in this piece with an annual cap of 4% that goes up each year, and we tie it to the Consumer Price Index urban rate instead of having multiple rates in that piece. We also seek to address the issue of the disability waiver rate system in the state, and we do that in a few different ways. And the reason that we felt the need to really try and address this is as we were looking at the budget and the forecasts and where we were getting spending that was unable to be controlled or measured or planned for, the rate exception process for the disability waiver rate system was one of those pieces. When we were expecting 4% utilization and now we have 25% utilization, we have something that we need to work to try and control, especially when we're working with budgets and trying to keep those budgets balanced. And so the first thing we do is that we require documentation for those rate exceptions that are requested for direct support, especially those that are professional wages or equipment that is needed to fund those items. This is one area, about 95% of the requests that come in for this rate exception is on these pieces here, the wages and the equipment funding. And so this is one way to make sure that if those are what the requests are, that this is where the money is going here. We also reduce the kinds of items that can qualify for rate exceptions. And so rate exceptions are supposed to be those things that are just above and beyond for the basic care piece, for those exceptional pieces above the average here. And in some cases, there isn't the need for above average spending. That includes transportation time or documentation or some positive supports. We also offer a county share piece in here of 1/3 of the cost for these rate exceptions to go about the state's business here. In other areas, we work with the Early Intensive Developmental and Behavioral Intervention System, the EIDBI system. Right now, it's an unlicensed system, and it costs a line item in the state budget of about $400 million. Here, we provide for a provisional licensure and checks along the way to make sure that there's accountability in our system, and gives the Commissioner of DHS the authority to implement a moratorium of up to 24 months on new licenses to make sure that the people who are providing the services are licensed, and those who are listed as providing services are actually providing those services. In the area of community access and brain injury waivers, we work to remove the housing insecurity and risk assessment criteria as automatic qualifiers for that nursing level of care piece of that, and that helps shift individuals with their needs to the places that better fit their actual acuity. We address the 3.9% absence and utilization rate in our family residential services and community residential services and our integrated community supports. We're still allowing for 365 days of billing if that's what's necessary or that's what was done, but we don't allow for it to go above and beyond that. We fund the SEIU PCA contract, and we delay the implementation of the waiver reimagine for the Phase 2 piece in efforts to bring more stakeholders on board with what we're doing there. Article 3 is the healthcare section. Here we find savings by reinstating TEFRA parental fees for those with children with disabilities and the parent's income is equal or greater to 675% of the federal poverty guidelines. For perspective on that, that's 675% number for a family of 4 would be $217,000 a year of income before this piece would kick in. That's Articles 1 through 3, and now, Mr. Speaker, I would ask for Chair Knorr to help wrap this up.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Knorr.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to start thanking my co-chair. This has been a difficult bill. And as we walk through what is in the bill, I'll do with Article 4, behavioral health. We are creating a certification process for state-based centralized list for recovery residents, known as sober homes, that takes responsibility for also housing support to the state rather than the counties. We create some reforms for behavioral health fund, whereby instead of 1 year, we're reducing it to 60 days with the assurance that the individuals will receive medical assistance. We increase substance use disorder rates by adding inflation to the rates for low and high intensity. We increase program integrity for substance use disorder. We fund psychiatric residential treatment facility in Clay County. We rework the substance use disorder treatment alignment with federal guidelines, which maintains 15 units and ongoing additional review. We also address some few things under the behavioral health. Under Article 5, background studies, we add background studies for owners, operators, employees, volunteers who provide direct contact in home and community-based services, housing stabilization, EIDBI. We also require DHS Commissioner to give preeminent weight to program integrity when reviewing reconsideration by disqualifying providers from owning or operating services if they have violated the program or committed any fraud in any of the program. Under Article 6, program integrity, we kind of tighten up the belts and we create belts and suspenders. We create an opportunity for steps for success. We implement early and often training program. We fund FTEs for detecting fraud, waste, and abuse. We allow the Commissioner to review all license holders within 12 months after change of ownership. Mr. Speaker, under Article 7, that is the direct care and treatment, we hold resources ready to support the counties based on the Priority Admission Task Force, and we also continue to address some of the challenges under the MSOP. Likewise, we create an ongoing $5 million for special fund for DCT health record systems to make sure that we don't have a problem with the IT system that we created last session. We also have $1.2 million for demolition of Miller Building to prepare for future construction of Anoka Metro Regional Treatment Center. Under Article 8, Mr. Speaker, we address homelessness in our state. We secure a housing support rate for potential federal cuts from the SNAP program. We eliminate housing support supplemental enhanced for individual rates. We create a separate funding to make sure that we can appropriate funds for housing support. We also fund homelessness under the Youth Act, Homeless Youth Act, Emergency Service Program, Shelter Capital, Safe Harbor for Youth grants. We also fund Wilder Foundation point-in-time homeless census for 3 years cycle. Mr. Speaker, that is the bill before you. I look forward to having more conversation. Thank you.
There are amendments at the desk. The Chief Clerk will report the amendment.
Schumacher moves to amend House Law number 2434, the second engrossment. The amendment is coded A9.
I recognize the member from Rock, Representative Schumacher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is a technical amendment to get the bill cleaned up. As we know, this is a complicated area, and there's a lot of moving parts, both at the federal and state level. And so this is just what stakeholders and professionals have found in things just to make sure that this bill is functional. This is a strong, functional bill that could become law, and so we want to make sure that it is ready to go. This amendment does that and has been agreed to by the parties.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Knorr.
Please vote green on this. Thank you.
Any further discussion to the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. The motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. There is an amendment at the desk. The chief clerk will report the amendment.
Perryman moves to amend House Law number 2434, the second engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A14.
I recognize the member from Stearns, Representative Perryman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, members, this A14 amendment comes from a bipartisan bill that I presented a couple of months ago in Human Services Committee. And it was laid over, so I'm happy to be able to bring it back, again, a bipartisan, and talk about this amendment. The amendment before us today is about nutrition support services for our senior population that depends on healthy and nutritious meals. The A14 recognizes something that I have been learning in my own area, and that is that the senior nutrition program in my area doesn't need additional funding, so there's no more funding given to it in this amendment. But what they need are assurances around how they can spend the state dollars appropriated through the Board of Aging. And this is an ongoing process that distributes both state and federal dollars. The A14 amendment clarifies a few things. First, that our community partners on the ground, like my Catholic Charities of the Diocese of St. Cloud in my district, who contracts with the state to provide senior nutritional services, can in fact use state appropriated dollars to try and find smarter ways to partner with other community organizations, like schools and restaurants, to try and stretch the dollars they are appropriated, working with other partners, being creative, creating a different model that might be able to stretch dollars and spend the money that's already there to the seniors that need it. Currently, federal Title II dollars do not allow such flexibility. So it's the flexibility this amendment will offer. Two, it makes clear that state funds transferred under this section of law are not subject to those federal requirements. So that's the next thing this amendment will do. Members, this policy provision is darn good and is currently in the omnibus Human Services Bill in the other body. So this amendment will set us up for success in conference committee on the issue, and I would appreciate a green vote for Minnesota's senior nutritional program. I thank you.
Recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Knorr.
Please vote green.
Any further discussion to the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. The amendment passes, and the motion passes, and the amendment is adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The chief clerk will report the amendment.
Nadeau moves to amend House Law number 2434, the second engrossment, as amended. The amendment is coded A15.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Nadeau.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I want to thank Chair Knorr and Chair Schumacher for hearing this bill. This bill originally was the supported decision-making bill, and for those of you that don't know, this is about helping adults and with intellectual or development disabilities or other cognitive impairments make decisions without having to go into guardianship or conservatorship. And thankfully, the chairs added money for this. They passed this. It's in the bill. But there was one little thing that we missed, and it was an unspent appropriation from 23 and 24. And so this amendment, all it does is extend the date that the unexpended appropriation from 23-24 can be spent on supported decision making. And please vote green.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Knorr.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please vote green.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. The motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. There is an amendment at the desk. The chief clerk will report the amendment.
Nadeau moves to amend House File Number 2434, the second engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A16.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Nadeau.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. This is the collaborative care bill that DHS has been pushing for a number of years, and basically it provides a collaborative care, psychiatric collaborative care is a way that we can provide mental services to adults and kids in a collaborative approach. It basically takes a consulting psychiatrist, it uses a behavioral analyst, and it uses primary care physicians. And just to remind everyone, 85% of all mental health care is taken care of at a primary care facility. So we introduced this bill. We had a great discussion. We had a lot of really good testimony. Unfortunately, the fiscal note came back, and I disagree with the fiscal note cost, but it came back very expensive. I wanted to thank the chairs. This amendment was to try to keep that conversation going, to add $500,000 so that our primary care physicians and our facilities could continue to have the discussion, start building the capacity to do this. But with that, I've talked with Chair Knorr and Chair Schumacher, and they said that they will work hard on this issue in conference committee. And with that, I withdraw the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Nadeau withdraws the amendment. There is an amendment at the desk. The chief clerk will report the amendment.
Kern moves to amend House File Number 2434, the second engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A11.
I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Curran.
Thank you, Speaker and members. The A11 represents some updates to the Min Choices assessments. As many of you have heard, there is a significant backlog in Min Choices assessments being completed. That's leading to folks not getting the services that they need. In some cases, there's 6-8 month plus waiting periods. There were multiple bill proposals this session from both sides of the aisle that were trying to address the issue in the backlog of Min Choices assessments. The A11 represents some negotiations of a few of us who had those bills between myself, Representative Hicks, and Representative Nadeau. And I believe both chairs have agreed to the language that we're bringing forward into conference committee, and I urge your support. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Rock, Representative Schumacher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, I would urge a green vote.
Any further discussion to the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. The motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. There is an amendment at the desk. The chief clerk will report the amendment.
Zalesnikar moves to amend House File Number 2434, the second engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A7.
I recognize the member from St. Louis, Representative Zalesnikar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This is a simple, friendly amendment. This is adjusting the components of the Nursing Home Standards Board to do it similar to how we do bonding. And so that right now, there has to be 6 members of the 9 to vote to pass any language for the Nursing Home Standards Board. And I want the members to know that the Standards Board is comprised of 3 state commissioners. It's comprised of representatives that are nursing home administrators, 3, or their employers, and it's also representative of 3 nursing home workers, or worker organizations. So that could be dietary aides, housekeeper, nursing assistants, and that's great. The problem is if 6 out of 9 can make a change in proposals, one entire group could be not part of a collaborative approach. And so from my perspective, in this last situation, what happened is there was a bill was passed, motions were passed, but there was no funding from this body here tied to it, which the nursing home administrators were advising this, and so there wasn't one nursing home administrator that voted for that because under the CMS federal rules, you have to have a licensed nursing home administrator to operate a nursing home in the state of Minnesota. Unless you are that, you can't operate them. So to me, it seems really short-sighted that we would not want to have the people that are having full responsibility and accountability, and they also have the position of authority in the federal language and in the state language to not make sure that they have a seat at the table, to represent the operational interests, to report back to the legislative body. So this is really simple. It just says 2/3 vote in all 3 categories, and that would ensure that when we're getting proposals to us as 134 in this chamber, that we have a balanced approach from all the key stakeholders, which would be true collaboration. So members, I encourage you to vote yes. We do this with bonding to make sure that we have truly a bipartisan bill. So I think that this would be a good step in the right direction. I urge you to vote yes. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Agbaje.
Thank you, Speaker. First, I would like to request a roll call.
Roll call having been requested, do I see 15 hands? There are 15 hands. There will be a roll call. Representative Agbaje.
Thank you. This amendment would essentially stall any decisions that are being made by the Nursing Home Workforce Standards Board. Unfortunately, this amendment is an effort to stifle the voices of workers. Since the board has been in effect, a majority of those votes taken actually have been unanimous. In 2024, there were 33 votes during the Nursing Home Workforce Standards Board's meetings, and of those 33, 31 votes passed and 2 votes failed. Of the 31 votes that passed, 20 were unanimous, 13 were divided, and 11 of them passing with all 3 employer votes in abstention. So industry has abstained from votes that have to do with worker pay and benefits, and it continues to cite a claim for upfront pay, like what we'll hear about in a different amendment later. But those abstentions on worker benefits and the current lawsuit that the industry has waged against this board says to me that the goal of this A7 amendment is not to create a supposed sense of harmony, but rather to stall and eventually destroy the board and with it the voices of workers. So I would ask members to join me in voting no to ensure that workers have a seat and a voice at the table. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Mauer, Representative Mueller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, members. It was a pleasure to serve on the Jobs Committee this year, this first time. And during those committees, I had a chance to hear a presentation from the Nursing Standards Board and how those are coming out. You know, Representative Lezacar is not asking for this to be repealed. She's not asking for this to go away. She's asking for everyone to be heard. And one of the reasons why that's so important is because what's happening to our nursing homes is that they're closing. They're unable to operate. And people who are unable to have a voice at the table are making decisions. They have decisions made for them. During the presentation, we went through when this whole process was going through, and we had all these flowery language about, look how amazing it was that they took all these meetings and they did all this stuff. They passed the draft for many of the changes. A draft was passed May 9th. A notice of adoption was passed December 9th. The standards became effective January 1. I don't know. My husband works at a nursing home as a chaplain, and we can't find enough workers to fill those positions. And so to be able to have such a radical change, and July 1 being a holiday, it's pretty quick to have such a quick turnover here. And they can't even find people to stay. Notice of adoption, December 9th. Standards became effective January 1. The next slide in the presentation said that there's a statute that directs the board to develop a process for temporary waivers and variances if a nursing home is at risk of closure or receivership. I asked the commissioner when the nursing homes were actually informed of this, considering this type of change was being done so quickly. And they said, well, you know, the waiver was and the waiver process was launched December 11th, 2 days after the notice came out. I said, so how did you let them know this was happening? Oh, we sent them an email. We sent them an email. If you're anything like me, I receive hundreds of emails a day, and unless there's neon lights flashing on it, I'm going to be like, wait a second, I'm going to have to figure something out here. I need to triage a little bit. It's unacceptable, members. It's unacceptable to have such giant changes for our nursing homes and not even have every voice at the table represented, even if they're represented, not to have heard. She's just asking for everyone to have a voice and everyone to have a vote. And what I mean by that is not that, oh, you can't vote. I mean that we need to have both sides represented and agreed upon while they're doing this. This was done in a way that was very poorly done, and not every voice was heard. And speaking from a person who has to listen to my husband talk to me about how important it is for us to have good workers and important it is for us to have good working environments, which I understand that was the reason why this was made. I get that. We need to remember that while people up here are discussing this and saying this is mandating on high, they're the ones who actually have to do it. And to have to do it within 2 weeks, pretty frustrating if you ask me. Members, Representative Lenzakar is not asking for this to be repealed. She's asking it for it to operate differently so that every person is heard from every point of the issue. Please vote green.
I recognize the member from Candy, Ojai, Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I wanted to make a quick comment on the A7 amendment. Again, as one of the members of the Labor and Workforce Committee, we spent some time talking about the Nursing Home Standards Board and how its longevity is probably going to make a huge difference on this vote right now, members, that if you want to see it around for a while, you should really listen to the A7 amendment. Because right now it is set up in a very hyper-partisan manner where 3 agency members and 3 employer members and 3 employee representatives on that board can make decisions for the entire state of Minnesota as it revolves around workforce rules with nursing homes. Now, setting up the board is one thing. It's going to be, it's obviously much more challenging for business industry in those areas. And again, this one here, like nursing homes, already a very challenging industry to be in, 24/7, dealing with some very, very fragile residents. In greater Minnesota, our biggest challenge is getting workforce. And don't kid yourself that nobody sitting here doesn't want to do more for those workers. We are only limited by the dollars that we send them, because the administrators out there, the teams that are working together are doing everything they can to keep their doors open and to take care of those residents. What Representative Zalesnikar is trying to do here is to say, if we don't fix this balance of power today or this session, the next time there's a change in the governor's seat, that board might be eliminated. And if you think this board should really be around for a while, then we should do what we also have seen around with the Workers' Comp Advisory Council. That is a well-established group of laborers, employers that work together, and they don't pass anything unless there's some bipartisan agreement on both sides. Imagine that. Wow. So if you want to not get serious about the real integrity of long-term Nursing Home Standards Board, and if it's going to work long term, then why not have a balanced share of power no matter who the governor is? But what you're setting this up for is a very potentially short-lived board action for these unelected officials that can actually make decisions that really affect our nursing homes, and the employers really need to have a voice that matters there, not just filling a seat, because right now, today, their seat and their votes don't matter. Everything they've done so far in that board has been expedited rulemaking. So members, please support the A7. I'm glad there's a roll call vote. I want to know if you're going to support your nursing homes. All that we're asking for is, when they make a decision, is it well balanced? Otherwise, this is probably going to be short-lived. So members, please vote green on the A7. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Pinto.
Well, you heard from one co-chair of the Jobs Committee, so I kind of felt like I needed to respond as well. And members, a reminder that the way that the board is set up is a manner that I think should make a lot of logical sense. There are representatives of employers, there are representatives of employees, and there are commissioners, and there needs to be a majority vote among all the members of the board. The problem with the A7 amendment is that it would disrupt that and essentially provide for a veto. It would mean that employers or employees could have a veto of anything that would be going on through the board. And so far from it being something that, in fact, a yes vote on the amendment would secure the future of the Nursing Home Workforce Standard Board, in fact, just the opposite is true. If we have it be that the board really can't do anything without every single group agreeing to that great extent, then in fact the board will lack any ability to do anything at all. A reminder that there is a significant variance and waiver process that is set out in law. That process is launched, and as of several months later, in fact, that no applications have been received. That process is allowing a variance or waiver if the nursing home is at risk of closure or receivership. And I want to make sure that we're being accurate in how we're describing things. There was a holiday pay rule that was referenced by a colleague where the notice of adoption was published in December of 2024, went into effect a couple weeks later. Remember, that had been adopted in May and had not changed in the ensuing months at all, had been communicated to all the nursing homes out there. Members, to have this amendment go forward would in fact stymie the actions of the board altogether, which may in fact be the goal. This is perhaps the purpose here. We don't want to do that, members. We want to make sure that it can proceed forward, making sure that we have the balanced approach continuing. Please vote against the A7 amendment.
I recognize the member from Rock, Representative Schumacher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. And first, I would just like to point out there was a packet that was passed out by the pages a little bit ago. It contains letters from the Chambers of Commerce in Minneapolis, Duluth, White Bear Lake, St. Peter, Morris, Fargo, Moorhead, illustrating the concerns that they have with what the Nursing Home Workforce Standards Board is doing, and the concerns that they have there. Very much worth the reads there. I'm interested in some of the conversation and debate that's been going on here with this. We're talking about destroying the board here with this amendment. I think that the decisions that are being made by this board and the way that the fiscal setup for this board happens to where all of the decisions don't get put into our fiscal accounting, into our forecast until after the forecast years, that's going to destroy this board faster than anything we do here at this level. When we talk about this setting up the ability to have a veto over the whole proceeding, the department has that right now. There's already one of the three legs on this stool that has that veto piece. And if we're talking about how we need to have collaboration on the rules that come forward, we're an example of how that works every day in this body this year. We can't get anything done without collaboration. Sometimes it's messy, sometimes it's not pretty, but we're getting there, and this board can do that too. And so, members, I would thank Representative Zelenslikar for bringing this and would encourage a yes vote.
Recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Knorr.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think we have had a lot from the work that the board has done, the Workforce Standard Board. This is to make sure that the workers, based on their economic security, but also making sure that we're taking care of grandma and grandpa. This is in the best interest of the nursing homes to ensure that there's respect for the work that is being done by the employees who work for them. This is to ensure that there's a fair balance. And this amendment will take away the balance that has been put there so that everyone is sitting there at the table. The decision-making process has to be more equal in terms of making sure that we protect the employees and the workforce in the nursing homes. Quite frankly, there's a waiver and variance that Chair Pinto talked about. Zero. No entity has requested a variance or waiver. Despite all the talk about this is not going to work, we have got some adjustments in this bill that will ensure that we take care of the nursing homes, and the pay that we are going to be seeing in the discussion that will be coming next indicates that they're doing well when it comes to getting the rates increased. Members, we have got the value-based reimbursement system in place. Anytime there is a change in the cost for the nursing homes, they will get reimbursed through the VBR process. So, with this amendment, it takes away the powers from the workers, and therefore I'm asking all of you to vote no. Thank you.
Any further discussion to the amendment? I recognize the author of the amendment, the member from St. Louis, Representative Zalesnikar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. As a retired nursing home administrator, I can tell you that I would never submit an amendment that would not be a collaborative amendment for the nursing homes. I have been down here before I was ever a legislator trying to get money for nursing assistants. I was a nursing assistant for 8 years. I've done the work, I've worked the shifts, and I did that pretty recently. So I will tell you that it's simply not true that you're not going to be looking out for the best interests in a collaborative way. Imagine if the 6 people that vote for something are the 3 commissioners and the 3 nursing home administrators, but not one of the employees vote for it. It's the same principle I'm saying to all of you. Whatever category you're talking about, 3 of them could be left out. It could be the 3 commissioners that don't support it. It could be the 3 nursing home employees that don't support it. In any situation, having 2 people out of 3 in a category means you're going to have true collaborative support for an idea that's going to sustain all 87 counties and be probably a really good bill. The reality is I've supported increasing wages for nursing home employees my entire career, for 30 years. And now in this budget that we're seeing right now, you're seeing that. So it's absolutely preposterous to think I would write an amendment as a retired nursing home administrator that would do anything that would be disrespectful to the employees that I worked side by side with my entire career. That would not happen. Members, what this does is allow that the commissioners and the nursing home administrators and the aides or the housekeeper, whoever it is, all have a voice, because at any one time, the way this bill is written, an entire category could be left out. Right now, you think the voice of the people you wanted to be heard were heard, but at any time, it may not be. And that's what I'm trying to make sure doesn't happen, that it sustains the long run and that everybody has a voice to have a good bill. And that's really what this is about. The wages are happening, I'm supporting it, and that is in this bill. So this is just making a long-standing policy change that makes sense. As nursing homes are a 24-hour, 365-day operation, and we need to be thinking through how we have balanced, collaborative approach. Members, I urge you to vote yes.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. The clerk will call the name of the member voting remotely.
Acom.
Go ahead.
Acom votes no.
Acom votes no.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 67 yeas and 67 nays, the motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. There is an amendment at the desk. The chief clerk will report the amendment.
Baker moves to amend House File Number 2434. The second and Grossman as amended. The amendment is coded A17.
I recognize the member from Candy, Ojai, Representative Baker.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I'd like to ask for a roll call, please.
Roll call. There are 15 hands. There will be a roll call. Representative Baker.
Thank you very much. Members, the A17 is another important item to talk about with, again, the Nursing Home Standards Board. This is an unelected board that has been appointed, and they have great power over how nursing homes are going to work, how they want to offer benefits, and yet they do not have the authority to see the things that this legislature does when we are approving budgets, when we're approving policies, when we're approving things that takes 134 of us, because we all have nursing homes in our own district. Some just one left in their whole county, by the way, in Cook County. But nursing homes are slowly going away. And this unelected board is making huge decisions that really are affecting our nursing homes. So what my amendment does, folks, is it just allows the legislature to be the ones who make the decisions when it comes to something with financial or policy changes. Why would we give that authority up onto such an important industry that we all value and appreciate? So the A17 does simply this. It just makes sure that when there's decisions made, it's got to come back to the legislature. It's got to be approved for what's it going to do, what's it going to cost. Again, we've heard earlier that the Standards Board has already approved giving out more legal holidays than probably that most of them have done. This is already affecting their budgets. And I think this is a big factor here. Again, I want to go back to the part that some of these nursing homes are city-owned or county-owned. As an example, up in the Cook County, they only have one nursing home left in Cook County, and it is a part of the local hospital taxing district. It estimates that the cost of the minimum wage mandate alone will be about $1.4 million between 2026 and 2027. The community may need to double their tax local levy to maintain that operations. Now, that was a decision made by folks all around the state, 6, 8, 9 people. I think 6 people made the decision to do this, and it had nothing to do or to react to what it's going to cost those residents up in Cook County. So there's a lot of uniquenesses about nursing homes, how they're run, how they're paid for, who owns them. So why would we give that authority up and not want to be part of those decisions, members? That's what we're here to do. So again, with a roll call already being called, I ask the members, please vote green on my A17 so we can bring back our local decisions for members sitting in these chairs that represent our areas in our own districts. Because if it's going to be a double tax on our residents, you better believe I'm going to be standing up and saying, oh, no, you're not going to do that to us. But this board has that authority to do that. So please, members, vote green on my A17. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Agbaje.
Thank you, Speaker. So the actual practical effect of this amendment is that the state will be the one that's double taxed because the state will need to pay the nursing home businesses twice. Once up front before any rules related to wages can go in effect, and then a second time when the nursing homes submit their updated rate through the VBR reimbursement. So that means they're getting paid at the front end and the back end. This amendment also brings all the decision-making back to the legislature and eliminates the ability of the board to work within the funding means currently available. But the board actually already comes to the legislature when they need something, particularly if what they need is a rule that's going to surpass the funding available. And actually, that is happening this year because in this budget, as Representative Schomaker talked about, we are actually helping them fund one of the rules that they've passed. So they're already getting their money. The matter of the situation is that Minnesota does invest in nursing homes. And as I said before, this bill, this entire bill, is actually doing that to cover the funding for the rules that are anticipated to come from the Workforce Standards Board. Additionally, we've also increased the reimbursement rate for nursing homes by 100%. With this influx of money, the board is in place to ensure that those funds are shared with the workers that are desperately needed across the industry, workers that could be recruited and retained with living wages. But instead, the industry has not fully participated in this board when it comes to benefits and pay, because they say, give it to us, all of it. We know what to do with it. We know what's best. But yet, we continue to hear complaints that we don't have enough staff. Homes are closing. So this board is meant to try something different to get different results. Finally, this amendment would reward bad actors because the data requested in this amendment would be used to support nursing homes that have done the least to help workers, while the homes that have done the most to help workers are left out and would receive less funding. And for those that say that there are nursing homes that can't afford these new rules and they need to be exempted, well, as we talked about on the last amendment, the law has a plan in place. There is a waiver and variance process in place, but hardly anyone has used that process. Particularly on the holiday pay rule that was passed, because that was within the means of the board, no nursing home has sought a waiver from that. So this amendment allows an industry that is already profitable to double dip and does not protect or benefit the workers. So I would ask members to vote no.
Recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Knorr.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members are allowed you to vote no. I think many individuals are confused with how the reimbursement process for nursing home is done. Anytime that there are costs incurred in a nursing home, that cost is already baked into our forecasted program. Meaning that if we increase the dollar here, the cost reporting comes in. Yes, there's going to be a delay because of the VBR. And thus, that creates a little bit of a delay, and that puts a burden on the nursing homes up front. And technically, there's also resources to support the nursing homes to be able to get a little bit of a loan program so they can pay if they wanted to. Basically, this amendment will take away something of value that we just created, something that really supports the nursing home. In this budget that is in front of you under this bill, we are paying upfront for the cost that the nursing homes are going to incur. It's beneficial to the nursing homes. Quite frankly, we're ensuring that individuals who are working in the nursing homes are paid fairly. $19 is not a lot to ask for. People are looking for a livable wage that they can survive. We want them to thrive. We want them to continue to work in the nursing home in the face of workforce shortage. Don't take away this from the workers who have been fighting to be seen, to be valued, to be listened to. So this is an opportunity for us to show that we value the work that they do. Members, please vote no.
I recognize the member from Morrison, Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've been listening to the debate over these last few minutes over Representative Zalesnikar's amendment and Representative Baker's amendment, both of which I support. And I'm struck by the words spoken, especially by the chairs on the other side of the aisle, who certainly are for this Nursing Home Workforce Standards Board. But the interesting thing about their comments tonight, Mr. Speaker, is that frequently they said, balance, balance, balance. And then at the same time, they come at us and they say, we need to tell the nursing homes what's in their best interests. And then they say, we're taking power away from workers. And then they say that we need to force the employers to. What amount of that is balance? It's not. It's not. So to return this jurisdiction over standards and appropriations and costs that would be paid by people across the state, to return that decision-making to the legislature is exactly what we need to do. One, because we're elected. First, because we're elected. Because we represent the people. Because we have their interests in mind. And because at the end of the day, when it relates to things that will increase costs for families, we're the ones who have to talk about the issues and the decisions that we make with the voters of this state. So if we want to truly find balance, that balance should be found in this House chamber in a 67-67 tie. Rather than trying to lie to Minnesotans and say that the Nursing Home Workforce Standards Board creates balance while trying to tell an entire industry what's best for them. Thanks, Mr. Speaker.
Any further discussion to the amendment? I recognize the author of the amendment, the member from Candy, Ojai, Representative. I recognize the member from St. Louis, Representative Scraba.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I represent the people of Cook County, the 5,636 people. I represent the Grand Portage tribe. They use this nursing home. This nursing home, I was going to speak kind of what Representative Schultz said, double tax, double dip, profitable, paid twice, forcing. What happened to the Minnesota that helps the people who can't help themselves? That's what I see. That's what I want to do. This board just, it acts for the whole state, and they don't have my voice. They don't have Cook County's voice. They have their corporate, all three groups, have a corporate mentality to keep things going. And I'm trying to figure out who's representing whom here. I'm stymied. I'm at a point where it's like, if you believe that the people of Cook County, the 5,636 people, need to pay twice, I'm not going to vote for that, to vote twice. Why would I do that? But collectively, as a state, we can help them when they can't help themselves. That's why we're here. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I now recognize the member from Candy, Ojai, the author of the amendment, Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm wondering if Representative Agbaje would yield to a question, please.
She will yield. Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative. Representative Agbaje, do you know what the target cut was for this committee?
Representative Agbaje.
Thank you. I don't sit on this committee, so I do not know what that target cut is off the top of my head, but I can look it up, or you can tell me.
Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm wondering if she would yield for a second question.
She'll continue to yield. Representative Baker.
Yes, I do know the question. Yeah, I don't sit on the committee either, but I also know it was a $1.3 billion cut. So to say that, again, having been on Health and Human Services for my entire time here, except this time I wasn't asked to be back on the committee, I guess. It was a huge cut. Obviously, it's a huge budget. And my question is, because you had some good points that you brought up, that we did fund it in this bill. We found the money. But Representative Agbaje, what would you have done to that statement today if we didn't find the money in this bill for this year? If there were new improvements in benefits, and the committee did not find a way to get that done, how then do you think we should react to that?
Representative Agbaje.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Representative Baker. As the law was set up, because the board has to come back to the legislature if the funding that they're seeking surpasses what's available to them, then that means the legislature gets to decide whether or not they want to acquiesce to that request. So if there could be a future where we don't have the funding to support what the board is requesting, and in that case, we may not be able to do it. But we do this year, as seen in this bill, and so it's really troubling to me, though, that we have these amendments that continue to stymie what the board is able to do, that continues to go against how we set up the board to ensure that they were coming to the legislature when they needed to, but that they were taking into consideration what actually nursing homes and their workers needed in what was allotted to them through the VBR system. But my concern is that there's a lot of talk about how there's a delay, there's a delay, there's a delay. That's how the reimbursement system was set up. So it might be better if there are fixes to the reimbursement system in order to ensure that you don't see the delays that you think that you're seeing. But nursing homes understand this, they put in their requests, and that's how it's set up, and that's how they do it. But if you want to change the system, I think that that would require a different amendment.
Representative Baker.
And thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, what we heard was if the money's there, they don't have to come back. If the money's not there, they got to come back. So they're coming back or not coming back. We don't know exactly because we always don't really know what the funding is every 2 years. The board was set up in a very hyper-partisan manner. I think that we can do a better job there. We can do this better, and I hope that we can do this better. Please support the A17. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill, or the amendment. The chief clerk will call the name of the member voting remotely.
Acom.
Go ahead.
Acom, no.
Acom votes no.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 67 yeas and 67 nays, the motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The chief clerk will report the amendment.
Gilman moves to amend House Bill number 2434, the second engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A13.
I recognize the member from Meeker, Representative Gilman.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. And members, I'd like to request a roll call, please.
Roll call having been requested. There are 15 hands. There will be a roll call. Representative Gilman.
Thank you so much. So members, I've heard a lot from my counties this past week, or this whole session actually, and I'm sure the majority of you all have heard from our counties as well. What the A13 amendment does is removes the operating adjustment from the Department of Human Services and DCT to offset some of the cost to the counties. Members, counties don't have the same ability to grow as the departments do. They simply don't have the same resources. And in my county alone, they're estimating a 10% tax levy increase with this shift. Again, counties have done an excellent job. They've had to sit and take care of and manage our most vulnerable. And they've done a very good job managing their budget. So what the A13 does, again, is it would reduce the county share by $83.2 million in fiscal year 2027, $108.3 million in fiscal year 28-29. And I also want to point out that this county shift does not take effect, again, until 2027. There's no fiscal impact in fiscal year 2026. While this doesn't remove the full shift, I know it will help alleviate some of the pain. So thank you so much.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Knorr.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think this is something that we all need to have the conversation about. When we talk about rate exceptions, the system was initially designed to be about 4%. Right now, the cost has gone up by almost more than 20%. In just 2023, the rate exceptions was close to $1 billion. That's a cost that is being shifted to the state. And quite frankly, the way that the system works is it's a state-supervised, county-administered. What we're talking about is the rates that we're seeing that normal process we will pay for. When it comes to paying for individuals with disability, the state will honor that. But then when it comes to the rate exceptions, we don't get to see how the cost has increased. We don't have a monitoring process. We don't know whether the funds are going to the CEO or the workers. We don't know whether the funds are going to pay for the equipment or not. We don't know how that funding is being spent. We're putting those guardrails in the system right now. But we're also trying to ask the counties, if you're going to commit to spending, we will not say no to you, but at least have a share. It's not a shift. It's a share of 16.67% of that rate. I understand it's challenging for the counties. It's also challenging for the state. And therefore, we'll continue to have that conversation as we go into conference. But for this amendment, because it's taking away from the operating adjustments, something that we've committed to, I want to make sure that we understand where it's coming from. This does not solve the problem of rate exceptions. We're going to go to the conference and find a good solution and address the cliff that the counties have already expressed. So I urge you to vote no on this amendment.
I recognize the member from St. Louis, Representative Zalesnikar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Thank you for this amendment, Representative Gilman, because both counties have reached out to me, and if you're looking at your email, I can't believe there's not a member in this chamber that hasn't heard from 87 counties, because this is a tremendous shift to the counties. It's millions. It's millions for St. Louis County. It's millions for Lake County. It goes on. And this is just one of many shifts that are coming. Commissioners that I've talked to have said we will see double-digit property tax increases. And so it's important that we look at why are we doing a program like this exception rate, the number of people, to the county's point, you don't have any idea who needs services. The state statutes mandate person-centered care. So if you decline and you need total care with your bathing, your dressing, helping you to the restroom, all the services, or you need 2 people to lift you, whatever it is, wherever you're going to live, that's the county's responsibility to make sure that care plan's followed, which means they have to ask the state for that exception. And that is what's funding the care. And I've just gotten flooded with more emails from disability providers saying this is how we're paying our staff the wage increases that we did. So we're going to have to, what are we going to do? Cut the staff wages that we just put in place to fund this? For the counties, it's a tremendous hit. And this is no planning for the counties. And so if we're going to do a new model of how we're going to do this component, I think planning through it in a more thoughtful way would make sense instead of just dumping this in a way where we're going to transfer to balance a state budget all on the backs of counties or school districts or cities. That is not going to be beneficial to the people back home in our districts because their taxes are just going to go up in property taxes. And we saw growth in government by 40%. So we've added like 6,000 employees to the state of Minnesota since 2023. And you can check this. I mean, I can just tell you straight off the things I know from just simple ones. 425 new employees in DHS, 153 in Minnesota Department of Health, 400 for DEED because we're going to be creating a new Minnesota, the workforce for the paid time off for DEED. That's a new program. Cannabis has 150 new employees. Children and Family, 500, because we created a new agency. We didn't move people from DHS. We are actually hiring new people. Department of Education grew 23%, but meanwhile, we have significant budget cuts in the programs that serve our people back home. in every one of our counties, in every one of our school districts, we are going to see significant double-digit property tax increases. And so I suggest that the conference committee, while I'm going to support this bill, because there's significant things we have to do for nursing homes and many other provisions, we cannot leave this session without dealing with this transfer to the counties. Our counties can't handle this type of a hit. We're not in a position for it. And the counties have made it very clear to me, and I think to probably all of you, that we have to look at this. And I think when we've had 40% growth in government, the first place we should be looking is how can we cut some of our government agency staff so we're not cutting programs to the people we're here to serve. Because right now, that's where the cuts are coming, to people we serve, and then we're going to stick it to the people back home in property taxes. And I don't know about you, but not one person is saying, please increase my property taxes by 20%. Members, I hope that you'll support this bill so that we make sure that we're dealing with the issues of serving the people, because we have large populations of seniors. We know that from the Aging Task Force. At a time when we have high need is not the time to change the plan in the matter like this. We can be working on it, and I think that there is work that can be done. But this, I don't think, is a solution. It's transferring another problem to another area, which is going to hit the people back home in property taxes. Please vote yes.
I recognize the member from Olmsted, Representative Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The counties determine whether a person needs an exception. And what I've heard folks say today, and I've heard all session, is that the exceptions have been exploding. Exceptions were not designed to be a thing that we do because providers said they won't take someone unless they have an exception. Exceptions were designed to be exceptions. In some counties, almost everybody's on an exception. That's no longer an exception. But the counties decide it's an exception because providers decide that they must have one to accept someone, and then the state pays for it. They can't say no, they can't disagree, because they're not the ones that do the min choices. I am asking everyone to vote no because the counties need to be part of this process, but they also need to be held responsible when they decide on an exception. And they're not being asked to pay for the whole exception. They're not even being asked to pay for 50% of the exception. They're being asked to pay for a small sliver of the exception. And not every county has reached out. Because the truth of the matter is, they need to get people in options, and providers are telling people that the option is an exception. If we don't get an exception, we won't take them. It's a bartering of taxpayer dollars with no accountability for the person making the deal. They are not supposed to be using exceptions to pay for bonuses. They're not supposed to be using exceptions to pay for anything except for direct care for the one person that has the exception, or the two people that have the exception. We need to go back to making sure that exceptions are for the right reason and that they are person-centered, that they're about the person who has needs, not about the county needing to get somebody moved, not about the provider and what they think they need, not about some kind of an agreement between people who are not receiving services. Exceptions are for the person. And this amendment, again, pushes that off and back onto providers and back onto case managers and does not hold the person at the center. So I'm going to be a no on this amendment, and I would encourage everyone to be one with me.
Recognize the member from Washington, Representative Johnson W.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I'd like to speak on the representative's comments, and I have talked to Association of Minnesota Counties. I've also talked to my county directly because I used to be a county commissioner and aware of these mandates. The counties do not have the ability to say no. They have asked for a letter from DHS, as we were learned, to say, okay, you want us to have skin in the game? Give us a letter that says we do not have to accept the exceptions. The state, they have yet to provide that. If the counties have a choice, they're more willing to go along with this, but they're not being given a choice. Once again, the state and up here are asking for somebody to put skin in the game, but not giving them a choice whether they want to even be involved. So I say vote yes on this, and actually I'll be speaking later on, is because we need to give somebody a choice if we're going to make them pay for something. Thank you.
Recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Nadeau.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. You know, members, counties are the best partners we have with Health and Human Services. And you know, I'll just use Hennepin as an example. I mean, just the increased county share on the rate exception in Hennepin for disability waivers is going to top $40 million. You know, that's a 4% increase in a property tax, and you know, in our most populous county. And our counties, I don't think there's a member here that doesn't want to ensure that we provide the level of care that we need to. And I know that every person I work in Health and Human Services at Hennepin County wants to make sure that we're meeting those person-centered needs at the time that we do it. And there's no one can argue with the increased level of need that's being presented. And as much as I appreciate how much work, you know, Representative Schumacher and Representative Knorr have done to try to meet this $1.3 billion cut budget, which is significant, shifting who pays is not a long-term answer, Representative Knorr. We need to find different ways that we look at how we find solutions to these folks, working with providers, working with counties, and we can do it, but it's going to be hard. I mean, what happens if we put caps back on waiver rates? What happens if we start looking at the enhancements that we're providing for people on medical assistance? Minnesota is twice. From a per enrollee basis for medical assistance, Minnesota pays twice as much as any other state. On one side, we should be proud of that. Absolutely. That's a good thing. But we're on an unsustainable funding course. What do we do in 2 years from now? We come back and we say, okay, counties, you paid, 16.6%. You know, we need another 4.5%. We need another 5%. And if that's where we're going, or the only other increase is, or the only other option is that we just need to raise taxes, you know, maybe that's the other thing. But members, we need to find a way, and it's not about casting blame or saying that all counties want to do is, you know, have exceptions and give people bonuses. That's not what this is. This is about changing the way that we treat people and recognizing that we're very person-centered, but our delivery system is very slotted and siloed. We still have that problem. And counties are the ones that are leading the charge on trying to find those efficient ways that we move forward. Now, like my friend Representative Lesnikar, I'm gonna vote for the Human Service Bill today. You know, because what's in here is important, and I appreciate the work that we've done, but it can't stop here. The Senate bill only imposes about $8.5 million in taxes on Hennepin County, has a cost, but they also have a different revenue raiser. So we're gonna have to work really hard to try to find, this middle ground. But it's not about blaming counties for not being part of the problem. Counties are the biggest part of the solution that we have, and they work so closely with providers. And so I support the amendment, and I hope all members vote green. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any further discussion to the amendment? I recognize the author of the amendment, the member from Meeker, Representative Gilman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, the A13 reallocates current funding to more efficiently meet the needs of all Minnesotans. This will have a very positive impact on all of our communities, the clients that they serve, and the taxpayers. Please vote green.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. The clerk will call the name of the member voting remotely.
Acom.
Go ahead.
Acom, no.
Acom votes no.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 67 yeas and 67 nays, the motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The chief clerk will report the amendment.
Franzen moves to amend House File Number 2434, the second engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A12.
I recognize the member from Douglas, Representative Franzen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Members, the A12 is an amendment that would remove funding from a Minnesota homeless study and instead direct it to housing support. Now, the homeless study, which Representative Keeler has worked on, it directs money to the Wilder Foundation to do that study. And members, the Wilder Foundation, and my computer just decided it didn't want to work, has $60-some million sitting in their account based on their 990 from 2024. So I would hope that members would be able to support moving the $900,000 and putting it into programs that will help our homelessness issue, and the Wilder Foundation, in my humble opinion, can fund the study themselves. Thank you.
I recognize the member from St. Louis, Representative Kozlowski.
Thank you, Speaker and members. As we've discussed in this chamber and in committees, you know, whether we're digging each other out of the snow or sharing a meal in Minnesota, we look out for each other. Yet, on any given night, we know that 10,522 Minnesotans are struggling with stable housing. This amendment is not only not functional, but it just ignores the reality that Minnesota is facing a housing crisis. 4 of every 10 homeless Minnesotans are children and youth. The number of seniors experiencing homelessness has increased by 7%. 66% of those who have identified as experiencing homelessness identify as Black, Brown, Indigenous, or people of color. Eviction filings are soaring. In January and February, we saw the highest evictions in the state of Minnesota. We know it's not just a metro issue, that this is an everybody issue, but homelessness did increase by 13% in greater Minnesota with fewer resources to tackle. And so before I continue, I want to make sure that this is really important, that we continue to fund and put state dollars towards it, and that we get a roll call on this for the Minnesotans who are counting on us.
There are 15 hands. There will be a roll call. Representative Kozlowski.
Thank you, Speaker. And how do we know this? It's because the triennial Minnesota Homeless Study and its companion tribal reservation study. Since 1991, the Wilder Foundation has been providing the state with this public service and a public good that is putting to work Minnesota's dollars and our limited resources. It is the most publicly available, nonpartisan, most trusted snapshot and blueprint to end homelessness in Minnesota, filling in the gaps and directly shaping for our state agencies, law enforcement, first responders, our school districts, our healthcare systems, tribal governments to design smarter, more effective systems that are going to be able to tackle long-term investments. And remind members that since 1991, this foundation has received state dollars, and putting this squarely in the new Office of Housing and Homelessness is what we ought to be doing. We need good data. We know on Missing Murdered Indigenous Relatives Day that without data, without seeing it, we can't solve the problem. I will also just give a quick note that, places like MACV, the Assistance for Counsel and Veterans, rely on this funding to strengthen their service delivery, but also our partners are going out and seeking more dollars to be able to tackle homelessness and actually meet the needs of Minnesotans. This isn't just a study, it's a blueprint for change. And I will say that ensuring everybody has a safe, stable place to call home at night is gonna make our communities safer, stronger, our economies thrive. The last thing I'll say is in 2024, there were 119 Minnesotans who died homeless, including members in people in your district, Representative Franzen, who died while homeless. In my community in Duluth, 66 of those, that's almost a third of the state of people who died in the streets were from my community. So members, we don't have to live or die this way. Vote no, hit that red button.
Any further discussion to the amendment? I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also encourage a red vote on this amendment. The information that is pulled together by Wilder is extremely valuable and extremely important. Having worked in the nonprofit world for the last 17 years, we use this on a very regular basis to help guide us in the decisions that we make for serving our people. And more importantly, when we're trying to secure funding from independent foundations, et cetera, it's important to have the backup to show what is happening in society. As an example, as we were hearing from Representative Kowalski, we were hearing about some of the different facts that come out there. One of the things that we saw in this last report is that in a lot of areas we saw that homelessness was starting to go down, except if you're 55 or older. That's a pretty significant thing. This is why these studies are important to be done by the same agency going forward every year. And they also do a great job of making this publicly available. They have a website where they break it out so you can see statewide results. You can see for the greater Twin City area, the greater Minnesota areas. These are the ways they break it out, and they've got detailed information. So without this, it'd be very hard for a lot of the nonprofits working in this field to be able to put together good information that the funders are asking for. The funders are asking for, when you're going to a private foundation, they're asking for what is happening in the homeless area. How is it impacting kids? What are the new problems that you're seeing out there? So that you're able to construct your request to meet the needs of the people that you're serving out there. This is why it's important to have this study. I would encourage a red vote so we can keep this study going forward.
Any further discussion to the amendment? I recognize the author of the amendment, the member from Douglas, Representative Franzen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Yes, in a time where there is limited funding and in a time when this body is scrutinizing nonprofits, it behooves us to make sure that the money is going directly to the people. The Wilder Foundation has a revenue as of the 9/90 of 2024, $65,194,698, with $157,165,252 in net assets, members. The Wilder Foundation can continue doing the good work, but they don't need our tax dollars to do it. So we would like to move that money to actually get to the problems of our state. So members, please vote green. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. The clerk will call the name of the member voting remotely.
Acom.
Go ahead. Acom, no.
Acom votes no.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 67 yeas and 67 nays, the motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Franzen moves to amend House File Number 2434, the second engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A19.
I recognize the member from Douglas, Representative Franzen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this amendment comes from some constituents in my district. So the situation is that my constituents have a disabled daughter who is very vulnerable, and the licensed residential provider is retiring. And the parents are not quite sure if they're going to be able to find that same level of service that her daughter is used to. Also, a group home is not an option for their daughter since she's vulnerable, she's not verbal, she has a celiac and some other issues going on. Their next option that they have is that one of the parents, either he, who's a principal at one of the locations of the school, or one of the schools that I represent, or his wife will have to quit their job. And other compensation options don't even come close to what to the current provider. So the constituents have asked that we work on this issue so that when there are situations in our communities where there is an individual, a family member, that the home is no longer where that loved one is currently housed at, when that housing is no longer available, that if there's no other options, or distance-wise, you know, we are in rural Minnesota, and the parents are also very not really too excited to move that that loved one many cities away, where transportation is an issue, etc. So this is something that I would like to see worked on. If there's a way that we can make an exception process for family members that are in some situations such as the constituent I'm talking about. So I'm going to withdraw the amendment, but I do hope that this situation can get discussed in conference committee. Thank you.
Representative Franzen withdraws the amendment. There is an amendment at the desk. The chief clerk will report the amendment.
Gomez moves to amend House File Number 2434, the second engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A18.
I recognize the member. I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Gomez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So the A18 is basically House File 2591. It's the Medicaid Not Millionaires Act. What this amendment is a contingent income tax rate increase that's sufficient to offset federal cuts to Medicaid should they come. It's imposed only on those people making $1 million a year or more, and it only goes into effect if the feds cut Medicaid. So I often tell people in my community to watch what politicians say, listen to what they say, but watch what they do. Watch what we do. Because what we had in this last election was very interesting. We had President Trump and Republican congressional candidates. They ran on lowering costs for regular people. They ran on lowering costs for working class people. Some of them like to talk a lot about the deficit. Some of you guys like to talk about the deficit, the national debt. But then what's been actually happening? So those were the words, but what are the deeds? What we've seen so far, total chaos, cutting critical services, laying off veterans, going back and forth and back and forth, gutting our federal workforce. Tariffs. They're on, they're off, they're on, they're off. What we know is that they're going to be impacting consumers' bottom lines. And then the House Republicans released their budget targets. And this was very revealing. Because what these budget targets say is they establish a negative $880 billion target in the Energy and Commerce Committee, which is where Medicaid is housed, and a positive $4.5 trillion target in Ways and Means. And so what this means is that all pretense of the priority of this party being working class people, being the cost of living, is out the window. No consideration of those forgotten men and women of our country in this House budget resolution. Because what this will do is it will cut $880 billion from Medicaid and give billionaires and corporations $4.5 trillion in tax cuts. The entirety of this budget resolution will increase the national debt more than $2 trillion. And it's not to lower people's costs. It's not to pay for health care, for child care, for housing.
Mr. Speaker, point of parliamentary inquiry.
That we
State
need
your point of
in our
parliamentary
communities.
inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, what legislative body are we and what legislative business are we on?
I think you know the answer to the first one, but we are on the A18 amendment to House File 2434. Representative Gomez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, what this would mean for Minnesota, if this goes into effect, is that we would be losing $1.2 to $1.6 billion a year to fund those tax cuts for billionaires and corporations. And what does that mean? What does Medicaid do in Minnesota? Medicaid is the single largest source of health insurance in Minnesota. 1.4 million people receive their health care through Medicaid, at least partially. 42% of our kids, 42% of kids across the state get their coverage through Medicaid. 1 in 3 births in Minnesota is covered by Medicaid. Half of substance use disorder treatment in Minnesota is covered by Medicaid. 20% of mental health treatment in Minnesota is paid for by Medicaid. We can keep going. You guys want to talk about nursing homes and long-term care facilities? Well, guess what? Medicare covers some of it, but Medicaid covers more than half of long-term care and nursing home costs for the people of Minnesota. Medicaid mostly goes to pay for health care for kids, elders, and people with disabilities. And maybe you don't find that compelling. I hope that you do. I truly hope that you do, because Medicaid funding touches every single one of our communities, every single one of your districts, no exceptions. Half of Medicaid recipients are in the 7-county metro area, and half are in greater Minnesota. But your constituents, if you represent greater Minnesota, are more likely to be covered by Medicaid than mine are. But maybe you don't find that compelling. Maybe the human element isn't the thing that's going to get you. But if you care about those nursing homes that you all just talked about, if you care about your hospitals, your rural hospitals, if you care about public health infrastructure, if you care about clinics, Medicaid funding is critical to the infrastructure of healthcare in every corner of our state. We just talked about Representative Scraba said something that stuck out in one of his speech that he gave. He said, we take care of people who can't take care of themselves in Minnesota. That's one of the things that we do. Well, Medicaid is how we take care of people. Medicaid is how we take care of people in nursing homes, of people struggling with addiction in our communities, half of whom get treatment paid for through Medicaid. It's how we support our rural hospitals. And most critically, it's how 40% of our kids, 1.4 million Minnesotans, receive their health care. So Medicaid matters to Minnesota. It matters in each of our districts, in each of your districts. And if, honestly, if the federal government, if the Trump-Musk administration and their collaborators in Congress want to move forward with this plan laid out in black and white in these numbers to gut health care for our most vulnerable in Minnesota, to threaten our rural hospitals and nursing homes and healthcare centers, if they want to do that, all so that they can deliver $4.5 trillion in tax cuts to corporations and billionaires, putting our country $2+ trillion more deeply in debt than we are right now, if they want to do that, then we can and should do something to stand up for the people in our state. And so this is an idea. Mr. Speaker, would you just instruct people in the body to keep their comments to themselves while I have the floor?
Members, Representative Gomez has the floor. Please keep your remarks to the alcoves or the back.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So you can decide. You guys get to decide whose side are you on. Are you on the side of the people of Minnesota? Are you on the side of our kids, our 42% of kids who get their health care through Medicaid? Are you on the side of our people with disabilities who rely on this, for whom this is a lifeline? Or are you on the side of the millionaires and the billionaires and the corporations? And that's the question before us. And it's before us in so many ways. This is only one of them. So I appreciate the time, Mr. Speaker. This is a tax provision. As the tax chair, I would never add a tax provision to a bill that was not a tax bill. And so I respectfully withdraw the A18. Thank you for your time.
Representative Gomez withdraws her amendment. There are no further amendments at the desk. The Chief Clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File Number 2434, as amended.
Third reading. Discussion to the bill. I recognize the member from Washington, Representative Johnson W.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this was, as a former county commissioner, as I've said before, this bill was very hard to read. Specifically, how once again, in order to get the work done down here, counties are turned to burden and take on the costs. And what that means is why we sit here, and this is specifically regarding the rate exceptions, is while we try to balance a budget down here and say we don't raise taxes and we're doing our job, citizens back at the county level are the ones taking the brunt. Because we know that this is going to go back and this is going to go directly to property taxes. One of the, I was county commissioner, and unfortunately, the direction for how things happen is people serve down here as representatives, they serve as senators, and then they go to the county. And once they get to the county, they go, oh, so that's how that works. Boy, we should have more go in the other direction. And we'd sit there on the board and go, yeah, we should. Then maybe we wouldn't be dealing with what we have to deal with year after year after year. One of the top topics when we get together, when we have meetings, all the counties get together, is the constant mandates, unfunded mandates that come on board. I have here that was provided to me. It's the 2024 mandates, and core functions for Washington County. This was prepared, sent out to the public. 69% of the services provided by Washington County are mandates. $195 million for those mandates. Of that, approximately $95 million of the mandate services provided are levy funded. That means they're unfunded mandates. That's a significant amount of money. Now we are looking at passing, depending upon whose numbers you want to go along with, roughly around 200 plus million back down to the counties. For Washington County, that's roughly 8 million. Every million is another percentage on the levy. And that's before even the costs that the county has themselves. So that's right off the bat. And one of the things that we just have to be aware of, and I touched on this earlier, these are not things that the county can say we don't want to do. And we're no different than the schools. The same thing is happening to the schools. Possibly great ideas are created down here. But then they turn around and say, well, we don't really want to pay for those great ideas. We're going to put them down to you. And we're going to let you figure it out to the taxpayers, how you're going to deal with that. One thing that I want to make sure is clear is that these exceptions, and I touched on it earlier, are not exceptions that, from my understanding and talking to my county, Association of Minnesota Counties, that a request is made, can we say no? And the state has not, to this point, said, no, you can't. What does that mean? That means another mandate. That means you do not have a choice. The phrase skin in the game means that you're willing, you have money invested in it, but something that you want to do. We want you to have skin in the game. The county is being told to pay for this. You don't have a choice. You just have to do it. And that's what, and unfortunately, you have to do. And again, we cannot say we are being responsible, in my view, we cannot say we're being responsible to taxpayers and to Minnesotans, because all we're doing is putting it on to somebody else's to pass on the bad information. And then they take the brunt of it. Members, this may be a good bill. There may be things in here that are good. But I made a pledge when I came down here, because I knew what happens after being on the board for 4 years, chair for the last one, that I made a pledge. I'm not going to continue the trend, come down here and support more and more millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars going to the counties for them to try and figure out what services are they now going to have to cut, or how are they going to go to our seniors that are barely staying in their homes, how working families are staying in their homes because their property taxes are going to go up significantly again. The challenging and the challenges that we're going to put on people down at the county level to try to stay in their homes, that's just something that I can't support, and I hope that you don't support too. Thank you, Speaker.
I recognize the member from Nicollet, Representative Schwartz.
Members, I rise today in support of the bill. I want everybody to know that nursing homes and assisted living facilities are vital to the economy and workforces of greater Minnesota, particularly in rural areas. Their closures lead to job losses and economic downturns. Members, please vote green.
I recognize the member from Freeborn, Representative Bennett.
Thank you, Speaker Olson. And members, I'd just like to make a couple comments here on this bill. You know, one of the areas that's always touched my heart greatly are our seniors. I like to call them our elders who live in nursing homes. And they are some of the most amazing people in this state. I think all of us in this chamber can agree upon that. And one thing I am very happy to see in this bill is that even though we are cutting spending by, $1.3 billion, and we need to do that because we're facing a huge $6 billion budget deficit in just 2 years. But even with those cuts, I really appreciate that nursing home funding has been protected in this, and actually a small increase. We need to protect that. These are the homes that care for our elders. Just in Albert Lea itself, we have 3 amazing nursing homes, care centers. I love to go visit the people there. I have friends who live there. They're important to our communities, to our families. The other thing that I really appreciate in this bill is the fraud protections. We have seen a lot of fraud and waste in the areas that this bill touches, and there have been some elements put in that deal with that. So another good thing. So while there are areas that I greatly disagree with and think could be harmful, the cost shifts to counties and so on, I will be voting for this bill and appreciate the protections for our nursing homes and the fraud protections. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Polk, Representative Gander.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. As a member of the Human Services Committee, I rise in support of House File 2434, the Human Services Finance Bill. To anyone who thinks that we didn't go far enough in cost containment, I can assure you that we did. As this bill was being finalized, we had approximately 50 agencies coming in one by one and saying that this would be very problematic for them from a cash flow standpoint to run their agency. And at the conclusion of all of that, we had to go forward with the bill as proposed. This was not easy. This was very difficult. Nobody enjoyed that. Nobody wanted to participate in that. Tough decisions had to be made. But when you're staring down the barrel of a $6 billion deficit looming in those out 2 years, 4 years, that's the kind of decision that had to happen. And so we made it. And we made it in a bipartisan fashion. Let's not forget that. We made it with limits that were set in a bipartisan fashion. We made it in a committee in a bipartisan fashion. It's very important for me also. I come from a background in city governance, not too much in the county, but I get it, that unfunded mandates passed back to cities and counties, very, very problematic. We're not going to be part of that. I trust that going forward into this arrangement now in reconciling with the Senate, that we're going to figure that out and make sure that if the counties are going to be having some of that cost shifted to them, that they have also some latitude in the decisions made, that they could constrain those costs by the decisions that they make. So I'm happy to say again, co-chairs Knorr, Schumacher, committee members and staff, thank you for an excellent bipartisan effort. The bill significantly contains costs as it cares for those least able to care for themselves, older Minnesotans, folks with disabilities. I encourage a green vote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the member from Stearns, Representative Perryman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just really, too, want to call out and thank everyone and the consideration for the nursing home funding that has been placed in this bill. One of the things I love doing is at Christmas time, my company does Christmas cards for the residents at 6 nursing homes. And I'm able to go in and we call on the nursing home people and we go in their rooms and their faces just beam to see people come and visit them. So I have a natural communication with many of the nursing home directors in St. Cloud area. So I thank everyone that the nursing home funding is in this bill. It's very important, as you'll know. Thousands of Minnesotans, especially in rural communities like mine, depend on nursing homes for the quality care and for jobs. And you've probably heard me say it before whenever I do stand. I always say it's not necessarily the what, but the who of these bills. The what is the increased funding and the care that you're putting for nursing homes in this bill. But the who are the Minnesotans who live in those nursing homes, the Minnesotans, the families that go and visit their families in these nursing homes, and that they have quality care, a place to go, and it's just inspiring. And so I stand to say thank you. I will be voting green on this bill. They put a great bill together for the nursing homes, and that's very important to me. So thank you very much.
I recognize the member from Goodhue, Representative Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand, too, in support of House File 2434, specifically around what it does to help nursing homes out in greater Minnesota. In my community, we lost, over the last 3 years, 2 nursing homes, one of which my church, when I was president, we contributed to in order to try to keep it in place. We didn't lose them because we were making a pile of money with them. It was because we were having a hard time finding qualified individuals to take care of those we love the most. And believe me, the struggle was difficult. Families were doing what they could to be able to find places close to our community in order to put our loved ones in, especially when times were short in terms of finding beds. While this bill is not perfect, and there are grave concerns I have over the shifts that are being made to the disability, or the shifts being made to counties, specifically around the disability waiver rate system. I am hopeful that in conference committee, that a common sense solution will be brought forward to be able to try to relieve the impact this is going to have on communities and counties throughout this entire state. So with that, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the member from Pope, Representative Anderson, PH.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. During today's debate, I was struck by what seemed to be that we're almost talking about 2 different industries or 2 different states. Somebody on the other side of the aisle said the nursing home industry is profitable. Well, if that's the case, why have so many nursing homes closed in recent years? One closed in my district a couple of years ago. And it really is impactful on the community. When a nursing home closes, where do the people go? They have to go further away. So it certainly isn't something that businesses choose to do, go out of business. It's because it's a tough business. Financially, it's a difficult business. I also heard a comment that they're double dipping. They get paid up front and they get paid at the end. Well, that at the end is after 22 or 24 months of waiting for inflation, and finally get paid for 7 or 8% increase in the cost of food and such. I wouldn't call that a super good deal, waiting that long to get reimbursed when inflation is really ravaging at some of these budgets for nursing homes. This bill, I think, strikes a good balance in terms of it had a big cut, over $1 billion in cuts. And I want to thank Chair Schumacher for his work. He's always stuck up for nursing homes in Minnesota. And I want to thank him for that. I have 4 of them in my district, and they're, besides taking care of all the people, the residents who live there, they're big employers in our smaller towns and cities in greater Minnesota. Big economic impact. They're important to all of us. My mother-in-law, 96 years old, is there in nursing home, gets great care, and we really appreciate what's done for these folks in our nursing homes. So with that, again, I'm going to support the bill and urge a green vote by all members. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the member from Dakota, Representative Vernig.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, I too rise in support of House File 2434. I want to begin by expressing my deep gratitude to Chairs Knorr and Chair Schumacher, as well as all of the staff who worked tirelessly to put this bill together. This was not easy work. It took long hours, thoughtful debate, and difficult decisions, but it also showed what happens when we collaborate across the aisle, as Representative Gander pointed out as well. And we stay focused on the people who we serve. Throughout the process, we heard time and time again about the overwhelming need for services and new revenue. The uncertainty surrounding continued federal funding only adds to the challenge and frankly has people very worried, especially as talk of threatening Social Security and Medicaid continue. These are programs Minnesotans rely on, and protecting them must be a priority. This committee puts the needs of Minnesotans first, and I would say that the House position reflects that commitment. Frankly, it's a stronger, more balanced approach than what we've seen from either the administration or the Senate. We protected critical services while responding thoughtfully to budget challenges. The cuts we are facing are bad. No one would claim otherwise. But we work to minimize harm and keep people at the center of every decision. Every voice at the table mattered. Every suggestion was heard. This bill is a work in progress. And I have faith that our House members will be strong negotiators and will continue to fight for Minnesotans. I support this bill today in order to move it forward with the hope and the trust that the final product will only be better. This is a hard bill. It reflects tough realities, but it also reflects a path forward. It is an example of teamwork and collaboration that Minnesotans expect and deserve, and I urge your support and a green vote. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Morrison, Representative Kreshaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members, and thank you to Chairs Knorr and Schumacher. Members, when we come down here, priorities is very important as we look at these bills. And with the budget facing us now, the looming deficits, we know that those priorities will have to become more and more important. Nursing homes are a priority. As much as I've been here and watching how the nursing homes have fought for funding year after year after year, and knowing the people that are affected by that, that is absolutely one of the first priorities that we should put together. And there's a strong position for that in this bill. Members, there's other entities that are looking at this as how it may negatively affect them. Of course, we're going to have negative effects all across the board with the budget we're facing, but those organizations and entities have options. Nursing homes do not have the options. They don't have the opportunities to find this, and they are looking after our most vulnerable, many times the most important residents in the communities. Members, we're all going to go through the nursing home at some point. That's an inevitability. And so having a strong House position on nursing homes and then going into work and look at some of those other entities and organizations and how we may change them is very important. Members, this should be a green board across, up and down, north and south, east and west on that board. We have to protect our nursing homes. We have to protect those citizens. If you really want to go back to your community and not protect your nursing homes, I don't know what else we would do. Those other organizations will find ways out of this, but our nursing homes need your support. Chairs Knorr and Chair Schumacher, thank you for your strong position, and I'm voting green.
I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Curran.
Thank you, Speaker. First, I want to thank Chairs Schumacher and Knorr for displaying kind and fair leadership through an extremely difficult exercise. I'm not going to try to convince anyone to vote green or red today, just share my thoughts on the process as a committee member. I spent 20 years serving people with disabilities in my community prior to coming to the legislature. And as a child, my mom was a DSP who grew into the role of supervisor and will retire next month as an expert in the field with an accomplished, experience-based career. Throughout my life, I sat through countless staff meetings listening to the new and improved ways our government found to leave us behind. I visited the Capitol and pleaded with my legislators to remember us, not to let us bear the brunt of cuts when the state budget really demanded more resources to cover the expense of taking care of people. Members, human services is my why in this work. I have a deep, lifelong commitment to do right by our neighbors who rely on the support of others. This bill, as written, doesn't do that. Having to cut $1 billion is not a good outcome for anyone. This proposal will have deep and lasting impacts. Yes, there are some good provisions in the bill, but we've got to be honest about cutting waiver rates by nearly 44%. We can call it removing a factor, but the end result is a direct reduction in the daily rate to care for people. Now, we've all been frustrated with inflation and rising costs over the years, regardless of who the president is. Yet we refuse to acknowledge that it is just expensive to take care of people. The state's dollar is not immune to the same price increases in inflation that we've all experienced. We have done an excellent job keeping people healthy, people are living longer, and in conditions that allow them to thrive. That inherently means that we need to spend more as people live longer and better lives. Now, we can legislate to reduce some of the needs people have, like battling hunger by feeding kids at school. We can reduce homelessness by providing affordable housing and assistance. But we cannot legislate away people with disabilities. We can't just say we're slowing the growth of government or slowing the growth of programs. What we are actually doing is slowing spending, reducing the resources for those whose needs aren't changing, and we're reducing the number of people who qualify for those services. But the needs remain the same. We're just choosing whether to meet those needs. I've heard members today talk about the responsibility of the state to help people who rely on the help of others, and the responsibility of the state to manage funding so that counties don't have to make local increases. Members, the only reason we have to resort to shifting costs to counties is because this legislature cannot come to an agreement on how to obtain the revenue we need to support these programs. And I wish we would consider more proposals like the one from Chair Gomez and be honest about the distribution of wealth in our state and in our country and its effects on our most vulnerable neighbors. Now, I could get angry and feel powerless and protest this bill by voting no. And some members today will vote no, and I think we should see some dissent today. That's absolutely fair. The governor's proposed cuts in committee budget targets, in my opinion, are not reflective of our values here in Minnesota. But members, I will be voting green today because right now we aren't passing a law. Right now we're voting to put the House Human Services Finance ideas into the pool to consider alongside the other body's proposals. This was a really difficult bill to create, but I think our team on both sides genuinely did the best with what we were given, and I'm committed to coming back to this floor with a better plan. My green vote today is to ensure the process and conversations continue on time to deliver our best for Minnesotans. Thank you.
I recognize the member from St. Louis, Representative Zalesnikar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. First, I want to thank Chair Schumacher and Chair Knorr for your hard work, because I know that Health and Human Services are tremendous responsibilities and a tremendous amount of work to understand the complexities between the counties and the providers and the operations, and most importantly, who we're serving. I'm grateful to see that the nursing homes are going to be stabilized for the 87 counties, because many of these counties have one remaining nursing home. And I say that because without them, it doesn't matter what services we can put in place at home. The reality is when people need 2, 3, 4 people to lift them, you need to have economies of scale. You need to have a center to have them go. Or what happens is they get transported to the emergency rooms, and we are seeing that over and over. Your emergency rooms are bottlenecked with people waiting to get to a floor, and then they can't place them. There's nobody that can take them. They're very high care at the point of going to a nursing home. And nursing homes, I want to remind you, are the only place you can get rehab for your 100 days with your Medicare benefits. You can get Medicare for some occupational health and therapies at home, but when you're doing intensive therapy for a fall, a fracture, it's generally going to be at a nursing home. And traveling long distance isn't what we want to do. In the when we were out of session, I traveled the state to see the Anoka Regional State Hospital, our only psych hospital with 90 beds, and the direct care and treatment places, the Minnesota Sex Offender Program, St. Peter, and saw what we're doing in that line of work, and we have a lot to do, and I'm grateful for the work this committee did to try to support the 90-bed psych hospital and then direct care and treatment, because that's a huge issue for our counties and for the people we serve. The Minnesota choice assessment that was changed is really important to the counties. when you apply for medical assistance, you have to have had your min choice assessment 60 days before. Oftentimes, families don't get the paperwork in on time for medical assistance eligibility, or they have no family. And I dealt with that time and time again. And then by the time they get the eligibility done, their nurse assessment is void because the 60 days is lapsed and you're back in this thing with no payment. You can't take the person. So this is going to allow for 1 year, which is really fantastic. My concerns are that the exception that we've talked about for counties is affecting those that are on CADI waiver. Usually, they're under 65. It stands for Community Access for Disability Inclusion. It's a big issue, and there's more people qualifying for CADI. They're not qualifying for this because they don't have needs. They are qualifying. I've served them. I've had county caseworkers call and beg me to take them in a nursing home setting because they can't find placement for high care needs in the group home or other settings they're in. And so as we look at the brain injury population and these high care needs, we cannot pass this on to the counties. And we shouldn't pass these costs on the counties because we've talked a lot about projections on what we think will happen with the federal government, but the reality is we're in a Minnesota-made deficit of $6 billion. We have made decisions that put us in a position right now to have a $6 billion deficit, and I say that this can't fall on the counties because of the $18.5 billion surplus, we saved $2.8 billion. That's it. That's it. So our projections on what the federal government can do or not do, we didn't take care of saving in Minnesota. We have spent money on all kinds of things. $6 million for the state flag and the new emblem. Nobody in my district asked me for that. But that's the cost for the sheriff cars. You're seeing it on the emblems. We had to replace, I had to throw away all my paper that had the wrong envelopes, everything. It wasn't a $35,000, innovation design thing. It was a cost to implement it, to put the new flag in all these courthouses. It costs money. I mean, money just doesn't grow on trees. It adds up. We created new divisions, new departments. We made choices to do that. And I'm not saying they weren't great ideas, but should that have been the first priority when we're cutting services back in our community? I would argue no. It wasn't the time to put a $30 million new children and youth. It wasn't the time to do $600 million over 4 years for illegals to have free health care because we have no federal match. It wasn't probably the time to create a new agency. It goes on and on. We have a new cannabis agency. Everything was $30 million. It's probably close to $800 million to create the new agency to do the paid leave that goes into place January of 26 through DEED, the Department of Economic Development. These are all costs. And so we had $18.5 billion, and now we are cutting programs for the people we care for. We are in the state of Minnesota, and now we're trying to balance a budget without raising taxes, and we shouldn't when we had this kind of money. But we also should not be willing to say to the counties, you're going to cut services to brain-injured people, and you're going to do it by increasing the property taxes to the people that live in our counties. That is irresponsible and should never happen when we have the opportunity to look at cuts in agency when we grew government right where we are right here. And we grew it by 40%, and there's 6,000 people that were added since 2023. That is, just that number is over $700 million. And you can look it up because I have, and that's the numbers. And they range from 600 estimate when you look at benefits to $700 million for new state employees. And while I think our state employees do a wonderful job, so do our county employees. So do our school district employees, and we have cuts in all those agencies. So members, while I'm concerned about the county shift, I trust that in conference committee this is going to get worked out because 87 counties can have millions transferred to them. And for those reasons, I'm in good faith going to vote yes, that we will get this fixed for our counties, and I urge you to vote yes for this bill. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Olmsted, Representative Quam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I've heard on this bill the pain and concern on both sides because this is a difficult area and it's a tough choice. I was on the committee for 14 years. And early on, you say, well, a 1.8, I think you're talking about, or a cut. The budget was less than half what our current budget. And it was $5 to $6 billion of deficit. And that was pain to try and balance the budget then. It's tough. Next year will be tougher. So what steps we can take this year to add improvement, efficiency, get rid of waste, anything that we can do this year will save on the multifold worse pain we'll have next budget period. This is tough, but we were hired here to make the tough decisions and stand up and do what's best. I'm hearing pain on both sides. I'm going to vote green on this bill because I think it's stepping towards we need to be to have less pain in our next budget.
Recognize the member from Clay, Representative Keeler.
Popida, Speaker. First, I want to start by kind of starting with the whole vice chair role. She's not there, but I wanted to give a shout out to my co-vice chair, Representative Gilman. This is a really, really hard committee. I want to give a shout out to Chair Schumacher and Chair Knorr. When you sign up for the Human Services Committee, you have to realize that every single conversation is about humans. And it's not about like the fun stuff with humans. Every single day, every hearing, we're talking about people's lives who are on the line. And the reality is, many of us have shed a lot of tears over this bill, over this dollar amount, because we've said it all. We care about our elders. We care about our littles. We care about people in greater Minnesota. We care about people in your districts. I care about people in your districts. Like, the reality is, this dollar amount is directly connected to individuals in Minnesota losing their lives. And we did have a choice. I didn't know, Zalesnikar, you were going to run through all the dollar amounts with things. I could have ran through all the dollar amounts in our tax exemption bill. We're doing a lot of things in a lot of ways, and we could get creative on what we want to do. And I hope that we continue to have those conversations. The one thing I will say about this committee is I've been here 5 years, and this committee on both sides of the aisle comes with some of the most stellar members. We showed up, we had honest conversations, both in committee and outside of the committee tables. We've sat in elevators at the Hyatt, because that's where we live, and brainstormed about cool, maybe new ideas. We've chatted on weekends about what to do for greater Minnesota. We've worked collectively. We are not only a group of very passionate people. We come with a depth of professional knowledge and understanding in many of these areas. The depth and the width of human services is massive. You've heard it all in all the comments that people are making here. And so I'm going to be voting for this bill. But this is a lot of heartache. And I do want to acknowledge the members that we have, particularly Representative Hicks, who always, in every way, in every shape, and in every form, does what her community sent her to do. She advocates for our disability services. She tells us the real information, and it's our job to listen. It's our job to make choices that impact all of us. We don't have to agree on everything. But I think the one thing that we all come here to do is to save the lives of our neighbors. There's many different theories or understandings that we can connect to. Maslow's law says we just need our basic needs met. As an Indigenous person, I believe that what we do here impacts 7 generations. Other people say, love your neighbor as yourself. We all come here with a foundation of love. We are all here to do some sort of work to love other people in this state. And I know that. I know that because I've had conversations with many of you. I see your heart, and I know what we're doing. And I want to recognize that the Human Services team is outstanding. And I want to give credit, that's not just our side. That's both sides of the aisle. So I want to start by saying thank you. I want to talk about some of the things in this bill that I'm really proud of. There's a lot that we have a lot of work to do, and I think we've discussed that. But the first thing is one of my main community priorities. I think as representatives, it's important that we listen to our community and our constituents, and it's our job to bring our community needs. So Representative Joy and I have been working very hard for years on a psychiatric residential treatment facility in Clay County. This is massive, and I want to go into a little bit of the story because if you don't know, I think it's really important that you do. So in the state of Minnesota, we are 50th in the nation. 50 of 50 states. We don't want to be last, I don't think, on this. We're 50 out of 50 on having the fewest number of beds for psychiatric supports per capita. 3.5 beds per 100,000 individuals. We are worst in the nation. And these are our littles. Now, I don't know what your guys' lives are like, how old your kids are. But I want you to pause for a minute and really think about the 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds in your life. Like, really do that. Like, pause your computer, stop typing for a minute, and think about the 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds that are in your life and what they're doing. And what happens, one, they have high-level behavior psychiatric needs. They need supports that understand those needs. These are our kids. These are your kids. The truth is this is not just a Clay County need. 28 counties have signed on to this. Many of you signed on to this as co-authors because this isn't just my community. This is all of our community. Hennepin County, your kids are in Clay County. 7 to 8 of them every single day. So what Clay County is doing is creating a border-to-border support for our littles who need the most help. Because do you know what happens? These kids have needs. The need does not go away. And let me explain to you what happens when you have a child who has a high-level need. And we don't have room for them in the state, because remember, we're the worst in the nation for this, is our kids have a couple options. Because the truth is that parents and adults are being honest with us, and they're saying that our child needs more help, and we don't have the capacity to love them the right way. Well, what happens to these children? They get shipped out of state to other psychiatric residential treatment facilities who we find out in the news later get shut down. Now, one of the things that Representative Hicks did is we did a study to actually put a dollar amount on that, because it matters how we spend our tax dollars. You guys have said that, so we looked into it. Do you know how much we pay outside state entities to take care of our kids? Do you know? $86 million we send to other states to love on our kids. So we're paying the bill, but the reality is that the way that kids heal is when you have access to do this together as a family. So you tell me, when you live in Bemidji and you have to go see your kids, yeah, I'm talking to you, right? You weren't listening to me, so let's engage together. If you are in Bemidji and you have kids that are down in Arkansas, how are your family members going to engage with them twice a week to get the care that they need? That's not appropriate care. That money, $86 million, can be spent in Minnesota to care for our own kids. $86 million. The other place that kids stay, and communities like mine, this hits a little bit more because I'm a border city, is they get housed in hospitals in a bed just for a place to stay. That also, guess who pays the bill on that? We do. And then the last place is they're put in juvenile detention centers, which is also not a place. I actually have a really wonderful juvenile detention center in Clay County. The team there is outstanding. They do everything that they can to support kids and the needs that they have. And they're saying that every day, again, 7 to 9 kids that are in our juvenile detention center should be in a psychiatric residential treatment facility getting the services and the helps that they need, because it's unique services. Our schools have been telling us that this is important. Our communities are telling us. Our public safety is telling us. So I am really grateful that in a bill that we had to make a reduction, that we found that loving our kids is important. We put a lot of money into homelessness over the last couple years, and we're going to keep that money going because we all believe that supporting sex-trafficked youth is really important. We know that it is important for kids to get the supports that they need in the ways that they need it. And also, I want to highlight that we added something for President Larson from the Lower Sioux Indian community. Now, as many of you know, I serve Moorhead. The intersectionality of who I am as an Indigenous woman is that I end up doing a lot of work in partnerships with our tribes, because the reality is all of our tribal nations, fun fact, all of our tribal nations, your party represents. And so when your party or your constituents come to me, I feel a little bit torn, but it was the right thing to do. Lower Sioux came to me and asked us, President Larson came with a very powerful testimony, to add CPTSD into language. And what that is our complex PTSD will be created in statute to cover case management regarding intergenerational trauma, racial trauma, and unresolved historical grief. Now, maybe that doesn't impact you. And to be honest, if that doesn't resonate with you, you're kind of lucky, because those of us who it does impact is devastating. And it's devastating for communities and generations to come. So I'm grateful for the work that we did. We didn't go far enough. We didn't do even a quarter of the things we probably should have. And we owe a major apology to different groups in Minnesota. But thank you, Chair Knorr. Thank you, Chair Schumacher, for the work that you've done. And we still have a lot of work to go. We'll be done.
I recognize the member from Candy Ojai, Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be fairly brief. I just want to also stand to support the bill today. I want to thank Representative Schumacher, Co-Chair Knorr. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We've heard that a lot today. Again, I stood and tried to convince members a couple changes could have been made to the bill to make it better. I think the Nursing Home Standards Board is something we need to keep an eye on, because this is not always best for those employers in those areas. But I did want to recognize today the work that you guys have done on SUD, folks. Substance use disorder got a substantial recognition of the rates and those payments for those workers in those treatment centers, in folks that are helping people every single day fight this horrible disease. And I just want to make sure that that was recognized today. Earlier, too, it was talked about there's a kind of a transition, too, happening with sober homes and how we're going to kind of oversee those. We're getting into kind of calling them recovery residents so that we can kind of have this transition with people that are coming out of treatment centers or times in their life where they need some time to kind of heal, get back into the regular life of things. And those homes need to have a little bit of oversight that we're trying to find the right part to get that as well. So that is an important part of this. I support the DC&T, the direct care and treatment process, how we're going to legislate and govern that area. I think that's going to be an important hospital system that we're going to have to keep an eye on and help them make sure that those oversights and accountability are going to be what the legislatures and members are going to have to do down the road here. I am concerned about the county shifts. We got to watch our counties, talk to our counties, and make sure they are heard, because we have to make sure that we give them the tools that they need, the computer system that we know we've got to get rid of, the SSIS, I think, something like that. Anyway, but it's that system we got to just throw away and get rid of it, but it's an important issue there too. Again, I just think that there's some good parts of this bill. Again, happy to see some expansions in the Anoka regional treatment for some more beds. Thank you again to the chairs. Thank you to members who are hearing these stories every single day you have committee. Again, having been proudly serving in that area for a long time, I know it's a challenging area. Thank you, and we'll get this bill passed off. So, members, I support this bill. Please vote green.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Knorr.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Before I begin, I just wanted to say a few thank yous. And then I'll let the rest to be completed by co-chair Schumacher. I think the collaboration that we have done, the work that we have shown that we can work together despite our differences in how we will be able to tackle the issues. Really appreciate the partnership to get this bill done. On our side, I'd like to thank Vice Chair Killer, who has been really crucial in addressing homelessness, mental health, and particularly the tribal relations. Representative Frederick, who has been really giving us the insights of the DCT and substance use disorder. Representative Hicks, who has been a big supporter and also making sure that we care about people with disability, ensuring that we keep their rights and waiver services. Representative Norris, who has been fighting for program integrity, Inspector General, and also some of the work that we have been doing collectively. Likewise, Representative Momanyi Hilsley, who has been a strong supporter of direct support professionals and mental health. Representative Koran, who has been really staunch supporter for disability rights and waiver services. Chair Fisher, who has been a strong supporter, who came to us with great mental health bill and homelessness. Representative Vanik, who has been a really good champion for IT modernization, and also some of the waiver programs that we were addressing. Likewise, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to really say thank you to our committee administrator, Nick Stumolanga, our DFL researcher, Molly Peterson, also our committee legislative assistant, Elijah Henderson. Likewise, I just wanted to thank our revisers, Dean Trefts, Alex Willie, our committee Paige, Hamad, and Shelby. I don't want to forget the work that the agency has done, from Christy Graham to Elise Bailey, the commissioner and DCT staff. Members, this bill was not easy. This is one of the most difficult bills I've ever had to do. I know we've talked about the challenges and why some people are feeling the pain that we see here. That was a huge responsibility on us to tackle the issue that we're faced with. This bill has got impact on vulnerable individuals, our seniors, people with disability, folks with mental health, substance use disorder, and more. I know we could have done a better job in creating a better system, but when you are given $1.3 billion cut, it is going to have an impact. If I was given and we were in charge on this other side, we will have just increased the tax and paid for it. Unfortunately, that's not where we are today. We can complain about shifts, which are not shifts, but also cost sharing. If we really are intended to do that, we should get a better target and also increase the taxes so that we can pay for those services. Members, it's not easy just to stand up here and say, we're seeing the need of most vulnerable members in our society. The number of seniors now outpaces the children who are in K-12. The need for people with disabilities continue to grow, and they're asking for help. Individuals who are experiencing behavioral health challenges, from mental health to substance use disorder, are extremely visible. Thus, there's a need to ensure that we do a better job. If we don't address it here, it goes back to the local governments. Members, this bill was intended to support those who need the most. We're making significant investments in nursing homes and nursing home workers at the same time, because it's about those who we care and those who are providing the care in the nursing homes. Members, we are investing in SEIU contract for those who are providing personal care assistance, or CFSS. It's much needed for those who are being cared at home also for those who are in a nursing home. Members, we are fully funding the rate increases for substance use disorder. That's a significant progress where we were 2 years ago. We're also addressing the challenges with mental health that continues to grow in various communities. From our children to our seniors to everyone. That is a need that is growing every single day. That is something that we don't consider when we are funding, because it's not only about physical health, but also the mental health. We need to fundamentally shift how we do the work when it comes to the human services. Members, we also made some progress when it comes to direct care and treatment. From last year or last session, when we created the Priority Admissions Task Force, when we expanded the beds, I know the counties have been struggling to address that, when we paid for those who do not meet the medical needs, when we shifted some of those costs to the state so that the counties can focus on providing care to those who need, when we transferred 10 individuals from the hospitals to direct care and treatment, that was a progress made. We continue that progress in this bill as we make adjustments to go forward. We also make a significant strides in strengthening our program integrity. I know we've had a lot about fraud, waste, and abuse. This is a bill that is taking us in the right direction. We also make sure that we take care of the most vulnerable individuals. I've had many times, shelter saves lives, and housing ends homelessness. That's exactly what we're doing here. Not much funding, but a small step at a time. If you haven't seen our streets for individuals who are struggling, you need to come to my district. You need to come to our areas. I'm also disappointed with some of the other counties who are not willing to invest in homelessness. This is a time not to shift those costs to those who are in the inner cities, but also to embrace that these are our own communities. These are our own relatives. These are our own family members. When our children are homeless, we haven't succeeded. When our seniors are now becoming more homeless, we have not succeeded. We need to commit to ending homelessness across the state. As I note, this is a bill in progress. We are not done yet. But when I hear from our counties sending their emails saying that they have no authority whatsoever, that's not the whole story. The counties are the lead agencies. The counties is where everyone gets the service. We tend to forget it's not about the counties, but the individuals who are getting that care. Individuals who are with disabilities will see the cut, not the counties. Members, not the counties. We're not shifting any cost to the counties that they cannot control. We are making adjustment to make sure that we control that how they do their service. We make sure that the service goes directly to that individual who qualifies for. If we're going to say we will not have a system in place, so be it. Let's put more money in human services. Let the counties do whatever they want to do. There's a shared responsibility. That responsibility is to make sure that every individual who needs services is taken care of. When we choose who gets care, who gets the rate exceptions, who does not get, it's going to be extremely difficult for all of us. I'm hopeful by the end of session, we will have a better understanding of how this works, and we will have a working group to address the needs of the counties. We're going to work directly with each other, not against each other, so that we provide services to the most vulnerable members in our society. I ask you to vote green for this bill.
Any further discussion to the bill? I recognize the author of the bill, the member from Rock, Representative Schumacher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members, for the discussion that we had today. It was a unique committee in the 15 years I've been here. The approach was a little different. The members were a little bit better than we normally get for those committees, and the timing was so early in the morning that I had to pretend like I enjoyed being here at 8:15 just to make it through. But we did make it through, and people came prepared for committee. They came with an interest and with an openness in the discussion, and that, I think, more than anything led to the fact that we have a bill today to have that not everyone's going to be happy with, but not everyone's going to be completely upset with what's in here as well. And I just want to take a moment to also do some thanks in this piece here. First with our partisan staff, Megan Rosbach, our committee administrator on the GOP side, Tom Brennan, our researcher, and Joseph Freyhoff, the committee legislative assistant for here. And we also have our nonpartisan staff that we worked with on a daily basis throughout the last several months. Sarah Sunderman and Danielle Punelli in House Research, and Joe Harney and Doug Berg in House Fiscal. They did a lot of the work and were here a lot more than we were, and will continue to be here a lot more than we are to get through this. When we got into this committee this year and we saw the forecast that was coming up, before we even knew what the target was, I guess that 8:15 hearing time should have told us that our target wasn't going to be that much celebrated, but we knew that we had to slow the growth in the area of human services, and that's where we took the focus and the way we targeted things. We prioritize the spending that goes on in here. Even with that, though, $1.3 billion is a large number to try to deal with, especially when these numbers get matched by the federal government, and so it's not just $1 being reduced or finding savings in, it's $2 throughout that, and in the process that we have in our system that we have here. But Chair Knorr was very good to work with in this. We never traded offers in this process. We went through line by line and discussed the pros and cons to each consideration that we had and where this money was going and could we have a better way, and this is what we were able to come up with. But I think I can speak for both of us that we would not want to have to do this in the way that it is being done, but we also have a charge to govern in this state, and I think that's the biggest thing as we look at this bill. This is when we're tasked with changing the way that we spend our budgets and a way to save the state $1.3 billion. This is how we would do it on a bipartisan level. And it's easy enough. I've been here for 15 years. It's easy enough to find a reason to vote no on things. A lot of times, especially when you're charged with governing, it's very hard to find ways to vote yes or to consider yourself a way to vote yes. It's just easier to vote no, and I will say with this bill today, especially if you think it's going to be easier to vote no, and then we'll get the better bill coming forward out of conference, and then that's the one you're going to be excited to vote for, it doesn't get any easier. It's better to stake your ground and figure it out from there with that. But with that, members, I would encourage a yes vote. We are here to govern. We did do bipartisan work on this. We found savings. We found reforms in here to make this work. It's not perfect. It's not going to be perfect, not with these numbers, but it was an honest effort done by good people, and that's the best that we can ask of our legislature, and would encourage a green vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. Members, please vote. The clerk will call the name of the member voting remotely.
Acom.
Go ahead.
Acom, aye.
Acom votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 109 yeas and 25 nays, the bill is passed as amended and its title agreed to.